I'd like to introduce Richard Romano. Richard is a freelance writer living in, occasionally working in Saratoga Springs, New York. Richard won the humorous contest. Richard's title of his speech is Fly the Unfriendly Skies. Fly the Unfriendly Skies, Rich Romano.
Madam Toastmaster, fellow JanJammers, about 10, 11 years ago, my fear of flying hit critical mass. Now, I've never been a particularly good flyer. I'd always sit there gripping the armrest with a force that could crush coal into diamonds. And that's before we even took off. But about the year 2000, took one particular flight from New York to Los Angeles. I felt like it was in an air show. The pilot must have thought he was the great Waldo Pepper or something. He's doing these flips in the air and flying upside down. There are wing walkers, we're flying through barns. It was like the right stuff in certain ways. And during that whole process, my fingers had become embedded in the armrest, and I couldn't pull them out. And even after we landed, against all odds, I still couldn't pull myself free from the armrest. And the flight attendants had to come over and actually unscrew the armrests. And then I had to go look for an emergency room to have them surgically removed. So there I was, walking through a crowded Los Angeles airport, looking like Edward Armrest Hands or something. And it was really, really embarrassing. So I vowed right then and there that I would never fly again. And for the next 7 years, I stayed true to my word. But then flash forward to 2007, a group calls me and wants me to give a presentation in Atlanta, Georgia. So I agreed, and then began looking into how one gets to Atlanta, Georgia from Albany, New York. And I discovered that by train, which is my preferred mode of travel, it would take 18 hours. And that's assuming the train was on time, without applying the Amtrak correction factor, which can easily double the length of any train trip. But even if it was on time, that still would mean that it would take me longer to get to Atlanta than I would actually be in Atlanta. That seemed really silly to me. So I finally decided that it was high time, so to speak, to get over my irrational fear of flying. So the first thing I did was buy a book. So I went to Amazon and bought a book on conquering one's fear of flying, which they still remind me about. I just got an email yesterday saying, you bought the Fearless Flyer's Handbook 3 years ago. We thought you would like this DVD of Airport 75. It's like when databases attack. Don't remind me. Anyway, the book wasn't really any help. So I figured I'll just get on the plane and let the chips fall where they may. So I began investigating flights. And at the time, and this has changed now, but back then, there were no nonstop flights from Albany to Atlanta, because I was looking to minimize takeoffs and landings. And I discovered that the cheapest way to get from Albany to Atlanta, and I'm not making this up, is to fly from Albany to Detroit to Chicago to Atlanta. And the kicker is, that would take longer than the train. Why not throw in a stop on Easter Island and make it a world tour? So that wasn't going to work. So I did some more digging and discovered that Delta had a nonstop to Atlanta from, of all places, Newburgh, New York. Yes, the bustling metropolis of Newburgh, New York. Unlike the backwater of Albany, apparently. We are the capital of the state. So it was a 1-hour flight, up, down, exactly what I was looking for. Find us in Newburgh. So I made my online reservations, and reservations indeed. Took a deep breath and hit confirm. I was on my way. But I had no sooner hit confirm than I realized one potential problem, something I had neglected. In addition to a crippling fear of flying, I have another phobia. There aren't any books on Amazon about this, no 12-step program to help me out. But for many years, I've had a crippling fear of Newburgh, New York. Let me explain. Many years ago, a good friend of mine had a near-death experience in the Newburgh, New York hospital. Apparently, the staff there were not as competent as they should be. And she said, and I quote, "Whatever you do, never go to the Newburgh hospital." And I, innocently enough, said, "Oh, I can't imagine my ever needing to go to the Newburgh hospital." You don't say things like that. It just incurs the wrath of the thing that brings the whatever that avenges really stupid statements like that. So now I had a whole new set of worries, in addition to the flying business. What was going to happen to me on my way to the airport in Newburgh that would result in my needing to go to the airport there? So the next couple of weeks were fraught with tension. But time-space continuum being what it is, D-Day arrived. I got up bright and early at 4:30 in the morning. Well, my flight wasn't until 5 in the afternoon, but whatever. I made my way down 87 to Newburgh, New York, made it to the airport without incident. Now, I wasn't really expecting a major international hub like LAX or JFK or something, but I was really quite unprepared for how small the Newburgh airport was. The main terminal was located in the strip mall, right between a Family Dollar and Uncle Ned's waterbed warehouse. The runway doubled as a McDonald's drive-thru. On the plus side, the only time the flights were delayed was when someone didn't want cheese on their Big Mac. Had that going for it. So I parked in front of the 24-hour laundromat, and then went into the terminal and checked in at the Dunkin' Donuts counter. Boarding pass was a cruller, I don't think. And then shambled towards the gate and began repeating the mantra I always chant whenever I'm under great stress. Where's the bar? Where's the bar? Well, actually there wasn't one. But fortunately, I remembered to bring in my carry-on luggage a bottle of my favorite single malt scotch. You know, a little liquid courage for the flight. But as you know, you're not allowed through airport security with any container larger than 3 ounces. So I had to improvise. Unfortunately, one of these is shampoo, and I neglected to label them, so a hit or miss there. So finally, they called my flight number to a single-digit flight number. Those did not bode well. So I made my way down the jetway. Now, I wasn't expecting, a giant Airbus or a 777 or something. But when it said Spirit of St. Louis on the side of the plane, I knew I was in big trouble. It looked like something the Air and Space Museum would reject for being too archaic. It's like the right stuff, Orville and Wilbur. But I didn't complain. I just climbed in behind the pilot, tied the rope around my waist, put on the leather helmet and the goggles, and went back. Pilot came on over a megaphone, introduced himself as Wrong Way Rogers, which did not. He said there would be a small delay in the flight. Apparently he didn't want cheese on his Big Mac. But soon we were on our way down the the runway. And soon we were on our way into the air after an old-fashioned. Found the shampoo. Anyway, after an hour, we finally landed on time in a cow pasture not far from the Atlanta airport. And when you consider that we had no real instruments to speak of, that's actually kind of impressive. So I immediately jumped out of the plane and was going to kiss the ground and realized it was a cow pasture. And was content to simply breathe a sigh of relief. Now, in the years since then, I've flown like a million times, occasionally on post-World War II era aircraft. And I've come to this conclusion, that I had been wrong all those years. I wasn't afraid of flying. I was afraid of airlines, which, as anyone can tell you, is a perfectly rational fear. Adam Toastmaster, we're